opportunity to actually speak this early in my membership, 7 days. And actually, when Rick asked me this last week as I was walking out the door, my first reaction was, no way. I haven't even looked at the manual. And then as I was driving home, I thought, well, maybe I should do this. Maybe this is some sort of clubby initiation, sort of a hazing of the new Toastmaster. So I'm going to put myself out there and just come what will. So here I am. Anyway, the topic is me. What could be easier? 4 minutes, 5, maybe 6, 51 years. Put it into perspective. I think I can do this. My personal history. It's interesting. A few years ago, I was speaking to one of our local musicians. His name is River Gregorian. And we were talking about our personal histories. And I told him how I'm from the Northeast. I moved out west. I came back east. And he said, the Artist Trail. And I said, the Artist Trail? I never thought of it that way. But as the discussion elicited further discussion, we talked about how we knew a lot of artists that seemed to come from the east, move out west, and come back. And I'm not an artist. I actually grew up in the northern shores of north of Boston, in a little town. I went to school at Northeastern University to study business. But I always had a love of art. So I studied computers, economics, business, but I had a membership at the Art Museum across the street. And I spent hours walking around the streets of Boston looking at the beautiful architecture and just falling in love with that. But I had to be practical. I was a child of Polish immigrants, and we had to work hard. And I just couldn't see the practicality of being an artist. But I still realized that that trail was in me. And so I went to school for a couple of years at Northeastern. I loved it. I ran out of money. It was an expensive place to live. I had a little bit of money to go to Europe, and I spent 6 weeks backpacking with friends. Went to a lot of museums. Loved it, came back, and thought, okay, now I have to finish my education. So I worked and found my way out west at Arizona State. Wide open, beautiful desert, beautiful change in atmosphere, change of feelings and ideas. And I ended up studying business but living with artists, which is very unusual for business students. I had musicians, we had a house full of musicians and artists, and I had friends that taught art, so I took a lot of art classes. I ended up with a minor in art history, a major in business. I graduated and took another trip to Europe. This time I focused on Eastern Europe, where my family was from. Spent 6 weeks in Europe, came back to Arizona, and finally faced reality. I had to get a job, a corporate job, because that's what I was preparing for all these years. So I worked for a developer. His name was Charles Keating. I don't know if any of you've heard of this man, but he was pretty notorious. And I did not feel comfortable in that atmosphere. It lasted about 2 months. So I left. I continued working as a waitress, feeling awful, feeling like a loser, because all my friends that graduated from business school were working for Coldwell Banker, Raytheon. They were wearing nylons and suits, and I was waiting tables. And then one day, 2 men came to my table. Were seated at my table. And one was a Mexican national, and the other was a young man from California, and they were partners. And we talked about what they did, and they imported architectural stone. They were looking for help. And we really hit it off. And they said, come by our shop and take a look at what we do. And I'll never forget the day I walked onto this lot filled with carved stone fountains, 30 feet tall, and sculptures and columns and just all kinds of amazing pieces of art. And I thought, I could work here, outside, under the sun, wearing shorts, and quickly got over the idea that I was a loser and I couldn't work in a corporation. So I ended up working for this company for 6 years. I started to get a little bored. I wanted to create my own thing. And I moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico, and opened up a shop there and lived there for a couple of years, which was a wonderful artistic community, beautiful place in the mountains as well. amazing architecture, so different from other places in this country. That lasted a couple of years. I had 2 small children. I married a, of course, starving artist, and needed to make some serious money. So at that point, I met an architect in Santa Fe that was working out in the East Coast, and he told me about Charleston, Charlotte, Atlanta, and suggested that I might investigate this area. He was working on a project in Charleston, South Carolina. So we bundled up the kids, took a plane, and I'll never forget entering, this was 1995, flying into the airport in Asheville and just seeing the beautiful mountains in this community. And I knew then this was it. We were going to make this happen. So we came here and started the business in 1996 and opened up the market to bringing stone to the Southeast. I've sold the business a couple times, and now I'm embarking, I'm skipping ahead because the red light's glaring at me, but I am embarking on the artist trail in different ways. I'm sitting for my contractor's license in a couple of weeks, and I've partnered up with an architect to start building some smart homes, I hope. And I'm embarking on learning how to speak like an artist, artistically speak. Thank you.